My billionaire ex-husband's company audited my small business and discovered I'd been raising his secret twins. The bell over my shop door sang once, and the man who'd signed my heart and half the city saw his smile twice on two small faces standing right beside me. Chase Rowland froze in the doorway of Wren and Hearth, his hand still on the brass handle. Those storm-grey eyes that graced magazine covers and board meetings swept across my little artisan shop, past the hand-thrown pottery and locally sourced honey displays, before landing on Astor and Cove. My 5-year-old stood behind the counter, Astor organizing receipt rolls while Cove counted change. From the morning's first sale with the intense focus his father had once applied to quarterly reports. Have you ever hidden a truth so long it walked back in on its own? Because that's exactly what happened when Seattle's most powerful CEO stepped into my sanctuary, carrying a briefcase that could destroy everything I'd built. A corporate audit could shutter my tiny business, put my kids to a hungry world, and drag us all into a storm I escaped once. The media would feast on this story. Chase Rowland's secret children, hidden away by the woman who vanished from his life 6 years ago without explanation. The tabloids would turn my sons into headlines, their private lives dissected for public consumption, their childhood stolen before they understood what privacy meant. Stay with me, because the signature I feared became the bridge we needed. Before we rewind to how we got here, thank you for helping Mr. Steele Rich Stories pass 600 subscribers. You're the heartbeat of this channel, the reason these stories find their way into the world. Tap that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and comment. 600 feet so I can find you in the comments section. Your support means everything, and I read every single comment you leave. Now, let me take you back 3 days, to when everything started falling apart in the best possible way. The email arrived on Tuesday morning, while I arranged eucalyptus stems in mason jars for the window display. The scent filled my shop, clean, sharp, grounding, exactly what I needed before opening for the day's customers. My laptop sat open on the counter, inbox refreshing automatically. One new message: Rowland Industries Corporate Compliance Division. My stomach dropped before I even clicked it open. "Mommy, why did you make that face?" Cove asked from his perch on the stool behind the counter, practicing his letters in a workbook. His pencil hovered over a wobbly C while he studied my expression, with those eyes that were far too observant for a 5-year-old. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart." I forced my voice steady, clicking the message open even as dread pooled in my chest. Subject: Mandatory Vendor Compliance Audit, Wren and Hearth. Dear Ms. Wren, your business has been selected for routine financial and operational review as part of Rowland Industries' quarterly vendor compliance program. This is standard procedure for all suppliers within our luxury hospitality division. Audit scheduled Friday, 10 a.m. Location: your business premises. Duration, approximately 90 to 120 minutes. Required documentation attached: C PDF. Please have all materials prepared and available for review. Our compliance team will conduct a thorough but efficient assessment. The signature at the bottom made my coffee turn to acid in my throat. Chase Rowland, Chief Executive Officer, Rowland Industries. Of course he'd personally oversee audits now. I'd heard through industry gossip that he'd taken a more hands-on approach to vendor relationships after assuming full control of his father's empire. Random spot checks, they called it. The billionaire CEO, who actually showed up to small businesses instead of sending subordinates. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare for the man whose children were currently arguing over who got the last blueberry muffin from this morning's breakfast. "Share it," I said automatically, splitting the muffin between them while my mind raced through impossible scenarios. Cancel the meeting? That would trigger immediate contract termination and potential blacklisting across the entire hospitality industry. Send someone else to handle it? I had no employees, just me and occasionally my neighbor Daniela, who watched the twins when emergencies arose. Astor looked up at me with those distinctive eyes, grey like storm clouds rolling over Puget Sound, exactly like his father's. The genetic similarity was undeniable if you knew to look for it. "Are you sad, Mummy?" No, baby. Just thinking. You think loud, Cove observed, abandoning his letter practice to study me with. The same analytical intensity Chase had once turned on market projections. Your face gets all wrinkly here. He pointed to the space between his eyebrows. Great. Even my stress responses reminded them of someone they'd never met. The shop was filled with its usual morning rhythm. Regular customers wandered in for their weekly honey supply or to pick up custom pottery orders. Old Mr. Harrison bought his wife's favorite lavender soap, the same order every Thursday for their anniversary tradition. The yoga instructor from down the street picked up the bamboo fiber towels she'd special ordered. I rang up sales, smiled at the right moments, recommended new products, maintained the careful facade of normalcy while that email burned in my laptop screen behind the counter. Chase didn't know about the twins. How could he? I'd left Seattle the moment that second line appeared on the pregnancy test, moved across the city to a neighborhood his social circles would never touch, changed my last name back to Wren, and built this life from scratch with deliberate invisibility. Except now his corporate fingers were reaching into my small corner of peace, and there was nowhere left to hide. That night, after bedtime stories about dragons and princes, stories where the prince didn't always win, where sometimes the dragon just wanted to protect her cave, I spread 6 years of paperwork across my kitchen table. Tax returns, vendor agreements, supply chain documentation, profit and loss statements. Everything appeared in order, legitimate, above board. Because it was. I'd built Wren and Hearth with meticulous care, every transaction documented. Every product sourced ethically, every penny accounted for. The only thing not documented was the reason I'd fled. The reason I'd taken that junior position at his father's company, saved every penny from my salary, then disappeared into the night like smoke when the pregnancy test showed positive. The knowledge that Chase Rowland didn't do family, didn't do permanence, didn't do anything that couldn't, had be controlled, measured, and ultimately discarded when it no longer served his corporate ambitions. Wednesday passed in preparation. I compiled documents into labeled folders, organized inventory for easy verification, cleaned the shop until every surface gleamed. I hired Daniela for Friday morning, told her I had an important meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. She'd watched the twins in her apartment 2 doors down, away from the shop, away from any chance encounter. "You look worried, dear," she said, patting my hand with fingers that had seen decades of hard work and harder choices. "Is this meeting important? It could change everything." She studied my face with eyes that had witnessed too much of life to be fooled by pleasant masks. "Change comes whether we hide from it or not. Better to meet it standing than cowering." Thursday night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chase's face from that last night 6 years ago. The way he'd looked at me across the downtown penthouse apartment, city lights painting us both in gold and shadow. "You're different, Blair," he'd said, loosening his tie after another 18-hour day. "You don't want anything from me." He'd been wrong. I wanted everything. I'd wanted Sunday mornings and shared coffee and the weight of his child growing beneath my heart. I'd wanted promises he couldn't make and futures he didn't believe in because his father had. Raised him to view relationships as contracts and love as a liability on the balance sheet. So I'd taken the only pieces of him I could keep, the twins who carried his sharp intelligence, his stubborn determination, his unexpected moments of tenderness that surfaced when he forgot to perform the role of Richard Rowland's perfect heir. Friday morning arrived cold and bright, Seattle's October chill carrying the promise of rain. I opened the shop early and arranged everything perfectly. The audit documents waited in labeled folders on the counter. The coffee maker gurgled with fresh brew, the expensive blend I saved for special occasions, though this felt more like preparing for surgery than celebration. Every display case gleamed. Every product label faced forward. The shop had never looked better. 9:58. I straightened a display of hand-poured candles, their lavender scent, doing nothing for the anxiety tightening my chest like a vice. 9:59. A black town car pulled up outside, sleek and expensive, and completely out of place on this street of local businesses and neighborhood cafes. Through the window, I watched him emerge. 6 years had only improved him in that unfair way powerful men seem to age. The same dark hair, now with distinguished silver at the temples. The same powerful frame in a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. The same way of moving through space like he owned it, because in many ways he did. 10 o'clock. The bell rang. Chase Rowland stepped into Wren and Hearth, and time folded in on itself. He looked exactly as I remembered, except for the fine lines around his eyes and something harder in his jaw. The weight of running an empire, perhaps, or just the natural weathering of 6 years. His gaze swept the shop with professional efficiency, taking in the exposed brick walls I'd painted myself, the reclaimed wood shelves my neighbor, built in exchange for a year's supply of honey, the carefully curated products that told stories of local artisans and small dreams made tangible. Then the back door burst open. "Mummy, Daniela doesn't have any juice boxes and I'm really thirsty." Asta's voice died mid-complaint as he registered the stranger standing in our sanctuary. Cove bumped into his brother's back, peering around him with the fearless curiosity that made parenting him simultaneously delightful and terrifying. They'd escaped. Of course they'd escaped. Daniela was wonderful but elderly, and my sons had inherited their father's strategic thinking. They'd probably waited until she was occupied with something, then made their calculated move. Chase's face went through a transformation I'd never seen before, even in all our years together. Confusion flickered first. Who were these children in the business he was auditing? Then recognition, as his brain catalogued the obvious, their ages, their features, the unmistakable genetic markers they carried. Understanding followed, settling over his expression like a breaking wave, inevitable, powerful, capable of drowning everything in its path. The audit forms waited on the counter between us, suddenly meaningless compared to the 2 small humans standing in the doorway. I glanced down at the last page, the one I'd been reviewing when the bell rang. The questions stared up at me in sterile corporate language. Related party disclosure. List any personal connections to Rowland Industries, its officers or board members. My pen sat beside it, suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. The first time I met Chase Rowland, he was sitting on a campus bench, feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons while reading a contract law textbook. Not exactly the image of Seattle's future corporate titan that would later grace Forbes covers and business school case studies. "You know they're basically flying rats," I'd said, juggling my own stack of business ethics books as I passed by. He'd looked up with those grey eyes that would one day make board members squirm and competitors reconsider their strategies. "Everything deserves kindness, especially things others dismiss as worthless." That should have been my first clue that Chase Rowland was more complicated than his father's legacy suggested. But I was 22, ambitious, and convinced I could navigate anything, if I just worked hard enough and stayed true to my principles. We didn't fall in love dramatically. It happened in small doses over the course of that autumn semester, shared coffee during all-night study sessions in the library, his jacket appearing on my shoulders when Seattle's rain caught us unprepared, the way he'd absently fix my collar. While discussing market projections and ethical business practices, he courted me with efficiency reports and economic theory, with silent companionship during exam week, and fierce debates about corporate responsibility that lasted until dawn. "You argue like you're defending something sacred," he'd said once, after I'd spent 2 hours dissecting predatory lending practices and their impact on vulnerable communities. "Aren't all good arguments sacred? We fight for what we believe shapes the world we'll inherit." He'd kissed me then, right there between the stacks labeled economic theory and international trade law. "Marry me," he'd said against my lips. Not a question. A statement of intent. Classic Chase, deciding what he wanted and pursuing it with the same focused determination he applied to everything else. The wedding happened under twinkle lights in his mother's garden 6 months later, before Margaret got sick and everything started unraveling. 75 people attended, mostly his family's business connections and society friends. My parents had died in a car accident my sophomore year, a drunk driver on I-5, gone in an instant, which meant Chase's family became mine by default. His mother, Margaret, held my hands that morning while the florist made final adjustments to the simple arrangements I'd chosen. "He's difficult," she'd warned gently, adjusting my veil with practiced fingers. "The Rowland men love deeply but don't know how to show it. They speak in acquisitions and contracts when they mean to say, 'Stay with me forever.'" I thought I understood. I was spectacularly wrong. The first year was everything young love should be. We lived in a downtown penthouse apartment that felt too large for two people, but perfect for our dreams. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. A kitchen I learned to cook in while he worked late. A balcony where we'd drink wine on rare free evenings and plan futures that felt inevitable. He'd bring me flowers every Friday, not roses but whatever strange, beautiful thing he found at Pike Place Market during his lunch meetings. Bird of paradise, protee, orchids that looked like alien creatures from some exotic planet. "Traditional is boring," he'd say, arranging them in vases while I cooked dinner experiments that occasionally succeeded. "You deserve exceptional, not ordinary." We talked about children then. Abstractly, someday. After the next promotion, after the next acquisition, after his father stepped down, Chase could reshape the company into something more humane. Always after, never now. Then Margaret got sick. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. 6 months, the doctors estimated, maybe 9 with aggressive treatment. She lasted 4, each one harder than the last. The shift started in those hospital rooms at Swedish Medical Center. Richard Rowland would stand at the window discussing hostile takeovers on his phone while his wife's monitors beeped their countdown to an ending everyone pretended wasn't approaching. Chase would sit beside her bed, holding her hand, but his own phone never stopped buzzing. The company was expanding into Asian markets. New opportunities were emerging. Death had terrible timing for business schedules. "She understands," Richard said when I suggested Chase take family leave. His tone made it clear the suggestion was naive, almost insulting. "Business doesn't pause for personal matters, Blair." Margaret knew that when she married me. She raised Chase to understand it too. Margaret died on a Tuesday in March, rain falling soft against hospital windows. The funeral was Thursday, efficiently planned, beautifully executed, over in 90 minutes. Chase was back in the office Friday morning. "I need to work," he'd said, when I found him at his desk at midnight Thursday, staring at spreadsheets that blurred together on his monitor. "If I stop moving, I'll have to think. If I think—" He never finished that sentence. He never cried either, not where I could see. Grief became another thing to compartmentalize, another emotion to manage. With the same efficiency he applied to quarterly earnings reports. The board started grooming him more aggressively after that. His father's heir apparent, they called him. The next generation of Rowland leadership. They filled his calendar with strategy meetings, his mind with expansion projections, his heart with nothing at all because hearts didn't generate shareholder value. I tried to reach him. Planned date nights he missed, cooked dinners that went cold, left notes he never responded to. The penthouse became a place we both inhabited separately, crossing paths. In hallways like professional roommates managing a shared investment. We tried for a baby that year. Not actively at first, just stopped. Month after month of negative tests while Chase's hours grew longer and his presence grew thinner. The fertility specialist said stress could be a factor affecting both partners. Chase missed 3 appointments. His assistant rescheduled twice more. The 4th time, I went alone. "Everything appears normal," Dr. Martinez said, reviewing test results in her sunny office overlooking Lake Union. "Sometimes these things just take time and better circumstances." Time, the one resource Chase couldn't acquire, leverage, or control. The pregnancy happened when we'd stopped trying, stopped talking about it. Stopped talking about much of anything beyond logistics and schedules. I found out on a Wednesday, sitting in a hotel bathroom in Vancouver, where I'd accompanied Chase for a merger negotiation. His company was acquiring a smaller competitor. I was there as the supportive wife, smiling at dinners and making small talk with executives' spouses. 2 pink lines appeared on the test. such small things to rearrange an entire universe. I planned to tell him that night over the room service dinner we'd ordered. Had champagne sent up, he'd wonder why I wasn't drinking, which would make the reveal natural and celebratory. But he came back at 2 a.m., deal successfully closed, already reviewing documents for the next acquisition target. I watched him sleep for 20 minutes, one hand on my still flat stomach, and felt the first crack in my certainty about our future. The miscarriage happened at 11 weeks. On a Monday morning in May, Chase was in Tokyo finalizing the Asian expansion his father had demanded. "These things happen," the emergency room doctor said, her voice professionally kind but clinical. "1 in 4 first pregnancies ends this way. Nothing you did wrong, nothing you could have prevented, but it felt wrong. Sitting in that sterile room alone, losing what we'd barely had time to. Imagine, while my husband negotiated trade agreements across an ocean. His assistant sent flowers, white roses, traditional and impersonal. Everything he wasn't supposed to be becoming. When he came home 3 days later, he held me. We didn't talk about trying again. We didn't talk about the loss or what it meant or how I'd handled it alone. The silence grew like a living organism between us, fed by his 18-hour workdays and my growing realization that I'd married a man who was systematically disappearing into his father's shadow. The second pregnancy came 6 months later, unexpected and terrifying. I'd been working at Roland Industries by then, heading their corporate social responsibility division, a department Richard considered necessary optics for modern consumers, and Chase had fought to expand despite his father's resistance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was professionally responsible for the company's public conscience, while personally watching my husband lose his private one. This time, I didn't plan a romantic reveal. I scheduled it in his calendar like any other meeting. Blocked out 30 minutes. I marked it urgent. "A personal meeting?" he'd said, looking at his phone with barely concealed irritation during a rare breakfast together. "Blair, can't this wait until the weekend? I have the Thompson acquisition presentation and—" No, the word came out harder than intended. "It cannot wait." We sat in his corner office with its view of Elliott Bay and Mount Rainier. I handed him the ultrasound printout without a preamble. Watched his face cycle through emotions his father had spent years training him to suppress. Twins. His voice cracked slightly on the word, the first real, unguarded emotion I'd heard in months. Due in October, 8 weeks along already, healthy heartbeats. Dr. Martinez says everything looks good so far. He stared at that grainy image for so long I thought time had stopped. 2 tiny forms, barely distinguishable, floating in their separate sacks. Our children. Our chance to build something that mattered more than market share. Then his phone rang. Singapore markets. Crisis in the supply chain. He looked at the ultrasound, looked at his phone, and something in his expression told me exactly where his priorities would land. He took the call. I sat there watching him pace by those floor-to-ceiling windows, automatically shifting into problem-solving mode, while our children's first photo lay forgotten on his mahogany desk. At that moment, I knew, understood with crystalline clarity that this wouldn't change, couldn't change, because Chase had stopped being a person and become a position. The CEO, the heir. Richard Rowland's perfect successor. The suitcase night wasn't dramatic. No shouting matches or thrown dishes or ultimatums delivered with theatrical flair. Just me, 24 weeks pregnant with twins, carefully folding maternity clothes into the bags I'd purchased in secret while he attended another board dinner he couldn't miss. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Simple, direct, the way he'd taught me to communicate in business settings. Chase, I need space to figure out how to do this. Raise children who understand that love matters more than leverage. The apartment on Queen Anne is mine. Please don't look for me. When you're ready to be more than your father's legacy, you'll know where to find me. Blair. Except he never looked. Or maybe he did, but not hard enough to find someone who didn't want to be found. The divorce papers came through his lawyers 8 weeks after I'd vanished. Clean, efficient, generous in its financial provisions. He wasn't cruel, just absent. I signed them in my hospital room at Swedish Medical Center, 2 hours after delivering Asta and Cove via emergency cesarean. The ink smudged where a tear fell on my signature line. But legal documents don't care about water damage or broken hearts. Starting over felt like learning to breathe underwater. The twins didn't sleep. Asta had colic, Cove had reflux. Both had an uncanny ability to coordinate their crying for maximum exhaustion. The modest apartment in Queen Anne felt too small, then too big when silence finally came at 3 a.m., and I realized how completely alone I was. Daniela found me during week 3, sobbing in the hallway outside my door, while both babies screamed inside. She lived in the same building, 2 floors down. Retired nurse, widowed young, familiar with hard choices and harder circumstances. "Give me one," she said simply. No judgment in her weathered face or gentle voice. "I can't just hand you my baby. You can and you will, or you'll collapse, and then where will they be?" She reached for Asta, who was slightly louder. I raised 3 of my own and helped deliver dozens more. Babies are just tiny humans who need food, clean diapers, and someone to hold them through the scary parts. That's how Daniela became our lifeline. She'd appear with groceries when I forgot eating was necessary, hold Cove during his reflux episodes while I walked Asta around the block at 2 a.m. She never asked about their father, never questioned why I did this alone. She just showed up, steady as sunrise. "You're building something," she said one evening, watching me sketch business plans while the boys finally slept in their bassinets. "What's it going to be?" "A shop, handmade goods, local artisans, things with stories instead of just price tags." Wren and Hearth, she read from my notebook where I'd written potential names. Like a bird coming home to warmth, like starting over without losing who you are in the process. I'd saved money from my time at Roland Industries, not the divorce settlement, which wouldn't process for months, but my actual salary carefully hoarded in a separate account Richard's lawyers couldn't touch. Enough for first and last month's rent on a tiny commercial space. Enough for basic inventory and renovation supplies, not enough for contractors, so I learned to do it myself. The shop opened when the twins were 14 months old, a narrow space between a bakery and a bookstore in Ballard, with original hardwood, floors that creaked melodically and windows that caught morning light like promises. I spent 3 months refinishing those floors myself, the boys playing in a borrowed playpen while I sanded and stained and sealed our future into every grain of wood. The smell became our signature, cedar and orange peel from the natural wood. Polish. I mixed myself using a recipe I'd found in an old homesteading book. Customers would pause at the threshold, breathing deeply, commenting how it felt like entering someone's carefully loved home rather than a commercial transaction space. The neighborhood embraced us. Mr. Harrison from down the street bought honey every Thursday for his wife's tea, their anniversary tradition. The yoga instructor discovered our bamboo fiber towels and recommended them to her entire studio. Word spread slowly, organically, the way good things grow when you're patient enough to let them. Local kids started coming after school, drawn by the low table I'd set up with free modeling clay. They'd make lopsided animals while their parents browsed pottery and artisan soaps. One girl, Rosie, crafted an entire zoo of misshapen elephants over 6 months. When her family moved to Portland, she left me her best one. "For your boys," she said shyly, pressing the lumpy grey creation into my hands. "When they're bigger and can appreciate good art, that elephant still sits on the shelf behind my register, guarding our story like a watchful talisman." The shop grew steadily. Instagram helped. Photos of morning light through mason jars, close-ups, of hand-woven textiles, the twins' small hands reaching for wooden toys. I never showed their faces, never used our last name in any marketing. Blair Wren, small business owner. No connection to Blair Rowland, who had officially ceased to exist in every record I could control. By year 2, I had 12 local suppliers whose work filled my shelves. By year 3, 28 artisans depended on Wren and Hearth as a reliable sales outlet. The twins grew alongside the business, taking first steps between pottery displays, learning colors from naturally. Dyed scarves, counting with handmade soaps lined up like fragrant soldiers along the checkout counter. Astor developed his father's intense focus early, able to sort items by size and color for hours without boredom. Cove inherited Chase's charisma, greeting every customer with enthusiastic waves and babbled stories only he understood. They became part of Wren and Hearth's charm, the young helpers customers called them, though they had no idea how entrepreneurial their genetics actually were. The Roland Industries contract found us through algorithmic sorting or cosmic irony, depending on your perspective. An email from their procurement department arrived on a Tuesday, sent to every certified small business in their Pacific Northwest vendor database. I stared at that email for 3 days before opening the attachment. The logo hit me first, unchanged from when I'd worn an employee badge with it daily. The company had expanded significantly since my departure, acquiring 6 more hotel chains, developing sustainability initiatives that looked excellent in annual reports. The very programs I'd helped design in my former role, now implemented without my name anywhere in the credits. The contract terms were extraordinarily generous. Quarterly orders for custom soap sets, locally sourced honey portions, handcrafted, welcome gifts for VIP suites across their Pacific Northwest properties. The projected income would triple my annual revenue, secure the twins' future educational needs, allow me to hire part-time help, and maybe, finally, take a full day off occasionally. All I had to do was sign as Blair Wren and pray that corporate systems never connected the dots to Blair Roland. Daniela read the contract over my shoulder while the boys napped on my apartment couch, 3 years old, and finally sleeping through most nights. This is substantial. This could transform everything you've built. That's what terrifies me. You've been running from something since I met you, she said gently, no accusation in her tone. Maybe it's time to stop running and start building toward something, instead of just away from the past. I signed that night, Blair Wren, in careful cursive that looked nothing like the flowing signature Blair Roland had once used on marriage certificates and corporate documents. The first order came through 2 weeks later. I fulfilled it with meticulous care, invoiced through their automated system, received payment from an accounts department that had no idea they were funding their CEO's hidden children's college funds. For 3 years it worked flawlessly. Quarterly orders arrived like clockwork. Direct deposits cleared without questions. The business thrived. The boys started preschool. Life developed a rhythm that felt sustainable, even comfortable. Then the audit notice arrived, and every carefully constructed wall I'd built came crashing down with the weight of one name at the bottom of an email. Chase Roland, Chief Executive Officer, the man I'd loved, the father who didn't know his children existed, the ghost I'd been running from for 6 years, walking through my shop door in 3 days. The first months with Astor and Cove taught me that exhaustion had distinct flavors. AM tasted like cold coffee and formula mixed in darkness. 4 AM carried the metallic tang of pure survival instinct. AM arrived with the sweet relief of sunrise and the fragile hope that we'd made it through another night intact. Daniela became more than a neighbor during those brutal early weeks. She'd appear at my door with groceries I'd forgotten to buy, holding whichever twin was crying louder while I attempted. Basic self-care, like showering or eating something that wasn't crackers, consumed standing over the sink. She never asked intrusive questions about their father, never pressed for details about why I was doing this alone. She simply showed up, consistent as breathing. "You need sleep," she said one particularly rough night when Cove's reflux had him screaming for hours. "Give me both of them. Go to sleep for 4 hours. The world won't end. I can't just..." "You can, and you will. I've seen mothers break from exhaustion, Blair. You're no good to them unconsciously." She was already gathering Astor from his bassinet with practiced efficiency. "I'll bring them back, feed them and change them. Go." I slept for 5 hours and woke up crying from relief and gratitude in equal measure. The business idea crystallized during one of those sleepless nights when I'd given up on rest and started planning futures instead. I'd been sketching in a notebook while nursing Cove, ideas flowing in the quiet darkness. A shop that celebrated handmade over mass-produced, local artisans over corporate suppliers, stories over transactions. Everything Richard Rowland's empire wasn't. "What are you drawing?" Daniela asked one morning, finding me surrounded by sketches and supplier research while the twins did tummy time on a blanket. A dream, maybe. A shop that matters. Dreams only stay dreams if you don't build them. She studied my rough floor plans and product lists with the same serious attention she gave everything. "Have you saved enough?" "Barely. Enough for rent and basic inventory. If I do all the work myself, then you do the work yourself." She made it sound simple, achievable. "I'll watch these two while you build. They're good company, and I'm retired anyway." The space I found was imperfect and perfect simultaneously. A narrow storefront in Ballard between a family-owned bakery and an independent bookstore that had survived 3 recessions through sheer stubbornness. The lease was affordable because the previous tenant had left it in rough condition: water, stained ceiling tiles, scarred floors, outdated electrical that needed upgrading. I spent 3 months transforming it, while the twins grew from infants to toddlers. Daniela would bring them by during renovations, letting them play in a safe corner while I sanded floors until my arms ached and my lungs filled with dust despite the mask. I learned to patch drywall from YouTube tutorials. I taught myself basic electrical work from library books. Painted exposed brick walls in warm cream that made the space feel larger and more welcoming. The floors became my meditation. Each pass of the sander revealed more of the original wood's character. Knots and grain patterns that told stories of the building's history. I stained them in warm honeytones, then sealed them with the cedar and orange peel polish I'd mixed myself. The scent became synonymous with wren and hearth before I'd even hung the sign. Opening day arrived in early spring, when the twins were 14 months old and finally walking. Daniela brought them dressed in matching outfits she'd sewn herself, tiny, overalls that made them look like the world's smallest contractors. My first customer was Mr. Harrison from 3 blocks over, buying a jar of local wildflower honey. "For luck," he said, pressing the exact change into my palm with ceremony. "New businesses need sweet beginnings." That jar of honey cost $8. I framed the receipt. The community embraced us slowly, then all at once. The yoga instructor down the street discovered our bamboo fiber towels and recommended them to her entire studio. A food blogger featured our artisan honey collection, and suddenly I had a waiting list. Parents started bringing their kids after school, drawn by the clay. Table I'd set up where children could create while adults browsed. Rosie was my most dedicated young artist. 7 years old, serious about her craft, she'd spend an hour after school every Tuesday making elephants from modeling clay. They were spectacularly lumpy, trunks too short, legs uneven, ears that defied both gravity and anatomy. "This one's my best," she'd announce each week, presenting her latest creation with the solemnity of a gallery opening. "They're all masterpieces," I'd assure her, and mean it. When her family moved to Portland that summer, she left me her finest elephant. "For Astor and Cove when they're old enough to appreciate good art," she said seriously, as if bequeathing a priceless sculpture. That lumpy grey elephant still guards my register, a reminder that value isn't about perfection. The shop grew organically through word of mouth and careful social media curation. I photographed products in morning light, highlighting the artisans behind each item, posted about sustainable sourcing and fair wages, shared snippets of the twins' hands reaching for wooden toys or helping, arranged displays, though I never showed their faces or used our last name. Blair Wren, small business owner. No connection to anyone else, anywhere else. By the shop's 2nd year, I represented 12 local artisans, potters, soap makers, weavers, beekeepers. By year 3, 28 craftspeople depended on Wren and Hearth as a reliable outlet for their work. I knew their stories, their struggles, their triumphs. The retired teacher who'd started making pottery after her husband died, The young mother who created natural soaps while her kids napped. The veteran who found peace in beekeeping after coming home from deployment. Every product had a story. Every purchase supported a person, not a corporation. The twins grew up in that shop, learning to walk between display shelves and count with handmade soaps. Astor would organize inventory for hours, his father's analytical mind emerging in miniature. Cove charmed customers with enthusiastic greetings and elaborate stories about the products he'd helped me arrange. "This soap is made from bees," he'd tell anyone who'd listen at age 3, his facts creatively interpreted. "The bees make it in their houses, and then we wash with it and smell like flowers." Close enough to the truth that I didn't correct him. The Sustainable Gifting Program email arrived on a Tuesday in spring, 3 years after I'd opened. My laptop dinged with new mail while I was restocking the honey display. The subject line made my stomach drop before I'd even opened it. I stared at that sender address for a full minute before clicking. The logo appeared first, sharp, modern, unchanged from my time wearing their employee badge. Below it, detailed specifications for an artisan amenity program across their Pacific Northwest hotel properties. Custom soap sets, locally sourced honey portions, handcrafted welcome gifts for VIP suites, sustainable packaging, quarterly orders with potential for expansion, revenue projections that made my hands shake. The contract would triple my annual income, secure the twins' future, transform Wren and Hearth from successful small business to established regional supplier. All I had to do was submit a proposal as Blair Wren and pray their systems never connected me to Blair Rowland. I spent 3 days staring at that email, opening and closing it like it might contain different information each time. The opportunity was extraordinary. The risk was catastrophic. If anyone in procurement ran a thorough background check, if any automated system flagged a connection, if Chase himself ever reviewed vendor files personally, "You're going to wear a hole in your phone screen," Daniela observed, watching me. Check the email for the dozenth time while the twins played with building blocks. Whatever it is, decide. Limbo helps nobody. It's a huge contract, from a huge company, with huge complications. She waited, patient, as always. "It's his company," I finally admitted. "Chase's." The twins' father. Understanding settled across her face. "And you're afraid he'll find out?" Terrified. But also, this could change everything for us. Real stability, college funds, maybe even hiring help. So I'm not doing everything alone. Then you weigh the risks against the rewards and choose. She made it sound simple because, in essence, it was. But choose, Blair. Don't let fear make the choice for you. I submitted the proposal that night after the twins were asleep, detailed my sourcing practices, sustainability commitments, production capacity, attached photos of products that had won local awards, priced everything fairly but competitively, signed Blair Wren in careful cursive that looked nothing like my old signature. The acceptance email arrived 2 weeks later, contract attached, terms even more generous than the initial proposal suggested. A procurement officer named Jennifer Watts would be my primary contact. Quarterly orders would begin next month. I printed the contract, read it 3 times, then signed while my hands trembled slightly. Scanned it back, hit send before I could reconsider. For 3 years, it worked flawlessly. Quarterly orders arrived like clockwork: spring refresh, summer collection, autumn amenities, winter welcome sets. I fulfilled each one with meticulous attention to detail, packaging everything in the hand-stamped wrapping that had become Wren and Hearth's signature. Jennifer Watts sent polite emails confirming receipt and occasionally requesting minor adjustments to scent profiles or packaging colors. The payments cleared through automated systems. Direct deposit every quarter, precisely on schedule. Corporate efficiency at its finest, with no human oversight required for a small vendor meeting all contractual obligations. I built the twins' college funds with that money, hired part-time help during busy seasons, expanded the shop's product lines, took my first real vacation, 3 days at the coast where Astor collected shells. With scientific precision and Cove made friends with every dog on the beach. Life developed a rhythm that felt sustainable. The shop thrived. The boys grew. Daniela remained our constant, watching them when needed and refusing. Payment beyond occasional jars of honey and handmade gifts at holidays. I almost convinced myself it could last forever, that corporate systems would never flag the connection, that Chase had moved on completely, remarried perhaps, started a new family with someone who fit into his world better than I ever had, that the divorce had been final in every sense, severing all ties beyond legal documentation. Then the email arrived that shattered my carefully constructed peace. Subject: Mandatory Vendor Compliance Audit. I read it standing at the counter on a Tuesday morning, eucalyptus stems forgotten in my hands. The twins were practicing their letters on small whiteboards Daniela had given them, completely absorbed in their task. The shop smelled like cedar and possibility. Morning light streaming through windows I'd cleaned just yesterday. The audit was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. 90 to 120 minutes of documentation review at my business premises. The signature at the bottom turned my blood to ice water. Chase Rowland, Chief Executive Officer, Rowland Industries. My hand found the counter's edge, gripping hard enough that my knuckles went white. 3 years of careful distance, of building a life entirely separate from his world, collapsing into a 3-day countdown. If your peace depended on a single form, would you risk honesty or hide a little longer? I had 72 hours to prepare for the man who didn't know he was a father, to meet the children who didn't know they had one. The bell over my door rang as a customer entered. I plastered on my professional smile, helped them find the perfect soap set for their mother's birthday, made small talk about the weather and weekend plans, normal transactions in a normal morning. Except nothing would be normal again after Friday at 10 a.m. If this is hitting, share it with someone building something from scratch. Sometimes the strongest foundations come from starting over with nothing but determination and hope. I spent Wednesday compiling documentation, tax returns organized by year, vendor agreements alphabetized and cross-referenced, inventory spreadsheets color-coded and verified, financial statements that showed steady growth and ethical practices. Everything a compliance audit might require, prepared with the same meticulous care I applied to every aspect of Wren and Hearth. Thursday passed in a haze of final preparations. I cleaned the shop until every surface gleamed, organized products so nothing appeared cluttered or chaotic, made sure the books balanced perfectly, every transaction documented, every penny accounted for. That evening, I asked Daniela to watch the twins Friday morning. "Important meeting?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "The most important one." I couldn't quite meet her eyes. "The audit. He's coming here himself." She squeezed my hand with fingers that had held mine through so much already. "Then you face it, standing tall. You've built something real here, Blair, something honest and good. That matters more than any complication from the past." Friday morning arrived cold and bright, October carrying the first hints of coming winter. I dressed carefully, professional but not trying too hard. The kind of outfit that said successful small business owners, nothing more or less. The twins resisted leaving for Daniela's apartment. "Why can't we stay?" Astor asked over breakfast, his eggs getting cold while he protested the disruption to routine. "I have a very important business meeting this morning." "Is it with the president?" Cove asked, syrup decorating his chin despite my attempts at containment. "Someone who probably thinks he's just as important." The words came out more bitter than intended. "You'll have more fun with Daniela anyway." She mentioned making cookies. That successfully redirected their attention. I walked them down the hall at 7:30, kissed 2 syrup-sweet faces, and promised treats if they behaved. Normal morning routine, except for the way my pulse hammered like a trapped bird trying to escape my chest. The shop felt different and empty, too quiet, too full of possibility for disaster. I arranged and rearranged the audit documents, straightened displays. That didn't need straightening, and checked my phone obsessively. 9:45. I made coffee, the expensive blend I saved for special occasions, though this felt more like preparing for battle than celebration. 9:50. Through the window, I watched the street wake up. The bakery next door set out their sandwich board, advertising daily specials. The bookstore adjusted their window display of autumn reading recommendations. Normal life continued while mine prepared to detonate. 9:55. A black town car turned the corner, sleek and expensive and completely wrong for this neighborhood of used Subarus and practical sedans. My stomach dropped. This was happening. After 6 years of careful separation, Chase Rowland was about to walk into the world I'd built without him. The car parked directly outside. I watched him emerge through my shop window, controlled movements, measured efficiency, every gesture calculated. He paused on the sidewalk, looking up at my sign. Wren and Hearth in warm gold letters, painted by a local artist who'd traded the work for 6 months of honey. Did he recognize my maiden name? Wonder about the coincidence? Or was this just another audit in his schedule, another small business to assess and categorize? 10 o'clock. The bell rang. Chase Rowland stepped into Wren and Hearth, and every carefully built wall I'd constructed crumbled. 6 years collapsed into seconds. Every practiced distance, every lie I'd told myself about moving on completely, all of it dissolved the moment those grey eyes found mine across the space I'd created. Then, the back door burst open. "Mommy!" Daniela's cat knocked over the juice, and it went everywhere, and I'm really thirsty, and Asta said I shouldn't come, but I needed to tell you. Cove's rapid-fire explanation died mid-word as he registered the stranger. Asta appeared behind him, always the more cautious twin, eyes widening as he took in the scene. They'd escaped. Of course they'd escaped. They were their father's sons after all, strategic thinkers who waited for the right moment and executed their plans with precision. I watched Chase's face transform. Confusion flickered first. Who were these children? Then recognition as his brilliant analytical mind processed ages, features, the unmistakable genetic markers they carried. Understanding settled over his expression like dawn breaking, inevitable and transformative. The audit forms waited on the counter between us. I glanced down at the last page, the one I'd been reviewing when the bell rang. Related party disclosure, list any personal connections to Rowland Industries, its officers or board members. My pen sat beside it, suddenly impossibly heavy. The twins stood in the doorway, Cove still chattering about the juice catastrophe, Asta studying Chase with wary curiosity. 2 small faces carrying their father's smile, his eyes, his determined chin. The truth I'd hidden for 6 years had just walked through my door wearing dinosaur shirts and mismatched socks, completely destroying every careful plan I'd made. The customer browsing ceramic mugs finally made her selection, a set of 4 in ocean blue glaze, completely unaware. She'd just witnessed the moment my 2 carefully separated lives collided with the force of a tectonic shift. I rang up her purchase on autopilot, my hands steady. Despite the earthquake happening inside my chest, every movement mechanical while my brain screamed warnings. Chase stood motionless by the door, briefcase in one hand, the other gripping the handle like it might anchor him to reality. His eyes hadn't left the back hallway where the twins had disappeared after I'd sent them to. Get juice boxes from the mini, fridge in my office, buying myself 90 seconds to think. The bell rang as the customer left, cheerfully oblivious. Silence rushed in to fill the space, thick and suffocating. Blair, not now. I moved behind the counter, putting solid wood between us. Professional distance, physical barrier, anything to create space while my world reorganized itself. "You're here for an audit. Let's conduct an audit." He set his briefcase down with deliberate care, the soft leather making barely a sound against my refinished floors. "Those boys, it is none of your business." The words came out sharper than intended, defensive and raw. "You wanted the divorce. Clean break, your lawyers said. No contact, no complications. That's what we agreed to." I didn't know. Exactly. I pulled out the prepared folders with hands that trembled only slightly. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't look. You signed papers and moved on to the next acquisition, which is what Rowland men do best, isn't it?" The hit landed. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the flash of something. Pain? Regret? Recognition. In those storm, grey eyes before his professional mask slid back into place with practiced efficiency. How old are they? 5. They'll be 6 in October. I kept my voice level, factual. You received notification. Your lawyers forwarded the birth certificates as part of the final decree amendments. I assume you were too busy acquiring something to actually read the attachments. That wasn't entirely fair. I knew it, even as the words left my mouth. But fairness had abandoned me somewhere between his 3 a.m. work sessions and signing divorce papers while recovering from an emergency cesarean, so I gave myself permission to be unkind. He absorbed the blow without flinching, his lawyer training showing in the way he processed information without visible reaction. Their names are beautiful and complicated, and not part of today's agenda. I pushed the first folder across the counter, the sound of paper on wood unnaturally loud. Tax returns for the past 3 years. All quarterly payments are documented, all inventory properly accounted for, all sourcing verified. Wren and Hearth maintains full compliance with vendor agreements. Chase looked at the folder like it might contain explosives. We need to talk about... The bell rang again, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. A man in his early 30s entered, carrying a tablet and wearing a Roland Industries badge clipped to his belt. Neat appearance, warm smile, the kind of face that probably put nervous vendors at ease during compliance reviews. Professional competence radiated from him like a carefully cultivated skill. Miss Wren? Quincy Dart, Senior Compliance Officer. He extended a hand, his handshake firm but not aggressive. I apologize for the timing. Mr. Roland called me this morning and requested I handle this audit personally. He has other matters requiring his immediate attention. I looked between them, trying to read the dynamic. Chase's face had gone carefully blank, but something in his posture suggested this wasn't planned, that he'd made this decision in the past 30 seconds. Quincy seemed genuinely unaware of any tension, professionally cheerful as he set his tablet on my counter. Other matters, I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, ma'am. Quincy pulled up files on his tablet with efficient swipes. Shall we begin? I promised to make this as painless as possible. Most small businesses find our process surprisingly straightforward when documentation is properly organized. Chase picked up his briefcase, movements controlled and deliberate. I'll leave you to it then. Mr. Dart is highly qualified. Actually, sir, since you're already here, would you mind staying? Quincy's smile remained professionally pleasant, completely oblivious to the landmine he'd just activated. Standard protocol for executive oversight on luxury vendor accounts. It'll streamline the final approval process and only take about 90 minutes. The universe, I decided, had a particularly vicious sense of humor. Of course, Chase said, his voice perfectly modulated corporate neutrality. Where would you like me? Quincy gestured to the small seating area I'd created near the window. 2 vintage armchairs. I'd reupholstered myself in a coffee table that usually held product samples. Anywhere comfortable, sir. This is Miss Wren's space, after all. The next hour passed in surreal slow motion, each minute stretching like taffy. Quincy proved efficient and surprisingly kind, asking questions about sourcing and inventory management with genuine interest rather than suspicion. He admired the local pottery, photographing pieces for his report while asking intelligent questions about the artists, complimented my sustainable packaging choices. I even noticed the lumpy clay elephant guarding my register and smiled at the story behind it. You've built something special here, he said, making notes on his tablet while examining my hand-woven textile display. The authenticity is remarkable. Most vendors we audit feel corporate even when they're small operations. This feels like walking into someone's carefully curated home. That's the intention, I said quietly. Everything here has a story. Every purchase supports a person, not a faceless corporation. Exactly what our luxury properties value. He photographed the cedar shelving I'd installed myself. Guests can tell the difference between mass-produced amenities and genuinely handcrafted products. Your work helps our hotels offer authentic local experiences. Chase sat in the armchair like a statue of corporate restraint, saying nothing, watching everything. I felt his gaze track my movements, arranging inventory for Quincy's inspection, pulling documentation from organized folders, explaining sourcing relationships with the 28 artisans whose work filled my shelves. Did he see the life I'd built? Did it register that I'd done this without his name, his connections, his resources? Beyond the settlement money that had come too late to fund the shop's opening, the back door opened. Daniela appeared, balancing 2 coffee cups and looking apologetic, the twins trailing behind her like eager ducklings. "I'm so sorry, Blair. They insisted you needed to know the cat is fine, and the juice is cleaned up and—" "Oh." She stopped, taking in the scene with sharp eyes that missed nothing. 2 men, one watching my daughter, like she held answers to questions he hadn't known to ask. "I didn't realize you had company." "Audit day," I said, silently blessing her timing and her coffee delivery. "Daniela, this is Quincy Dart from Roland Industries Compliance Division, and Chase Roland, the CEO." Something flickered across her face, recognition perhaps, or understanding. She'd heard enough over 5 years of friendship to know that name carried weight. "Interesting," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "I brought coffee. Thought you might need it." She set the cups down with slightly more force than necessary, protective instincts showing in small gestures. "The twins wanted to show you something." Asta and Cove bounded over, clutching papers covered in crayon scribbles, Daniela's art therapy, as she called it. The boys called it masterpiece time and took their creations very seriously. "Mommy, look! I made a dragon." Cove thrust his drawing forward with enthusiastic pride, purple scribbles that might have been a dragon or possibly a particularly aggressive cloud formation. "It's beautiful, baby." "Mine's a spaceship," Asta announced, his drawing only slightly more recognizable due to his methodical approach. "It goes to the moon and brings back rocks for scientific research." Quincy laughed, genuine delight in his voice. "Future astronaut? Maybe," Asta said, with a seriousness only 5-year-olds can achieve. "Or a builder." "I like fixing things and making them work better." I felt rather than see Chase's sharp intake of breath. Asta sounded exactly like him, that same practical, analytical tone he'd use. When solving complex problems, reducing chaos to manageable components. "Well, gentlemen," Daniela said brightly, already herding the twins toward the door with practiced efficiency, "let's give your mom space to finish her important meeting. I have cookies that need official taste testing." "But I wanted to show the man my dragon," Cove protested, looking directly at Chase with those unmistakable grey eyes that made the genetic connection impossible to deny. The silence stretched taut as wire. Quincy looked confused, his professional composure showing slight cracks. Chase looked devastated, every careful wall crumbling. I looked for any escape route that didn't involve spontaneous combustion. "The man is very busy with work," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "But maybe you can tell him about it another time." Cove seemed satisfied with this compromise, his attention span already moving to promised cookies. They tumbled back out with Daniela, who shot me a look that promised many questions later. So many questions. Quincy cleared his throat, professional enough to pretend nothing unusual had happened. "Lovely children. They have very distinctive features. They have their father's eyes," I heard myself say. Some self-destructive impulse pushing the words out. Something in my tone made Quincy pause, his tablet hovering mid-note. He glanced between Chase and me with the dawning comprehension of someone intelligent enough to connect obvious dots, and I watched realization settle across his face with the slow horror of inevitable disaster. "Ah," he said carefully, his professional composure admirable under the circumstances. "I see, do you?" Chase's voice came out quiet, but sharp enough to cut. "I think perhaps we should address the related party disclosure form." Quincy pulled up a document on his tablet with slightly fumbling fingers, suddenly very interested in proper procedure. "It's standard protocol for all vendor audits. Requires disclosure of any personal or familial relationships with Roland Industries officers, board members, or executives. He handed me the tablet with something like sympathy in his expression. The form filled the screen, neat checkboxes and empty fields waiting for truth or continued deception. Question 7. Is the business owner related to, formally related to, or personally connected with any Roland Industries officer, director, or board member? If yes, please specify relationship and relevant dates. My finger hovered over the screen. 6 years of careful separation. 6 years of building something entirely mine. All of it coming down to a single checkbox and a text field that demanded honesty. If your peace depended on a single form, would you risk honesty or hide a little longer? I marked yes. In the text field, I typed with deliberate precision, previously married to Chase Rowland, CEO. Married May 2016, legally separated March 2018, divorce finalized October 2018. No contact maintained since separation per mutual agreement. My hands didn't shake. The words appeared clean and factual on the screen, each letter a small detonation of truth that couldn't be recalled. I handed the tablet back to Quincy, who read my response with careful neutrality. Then he looked at Chase with something approaching concern. Sir, this creates a potential conflict of interest in the audit process. Protocol requires... I'm aware of protocol, Mr. Dart. Chase stood, his voice perfectly controlled corporate ice. Every word measured. Complete your assessment using standard procedures. I'll recuse myself from final approval. Ms. Wren's account will be reassigned to a different oversight officer for all future interactions. Understood, sir. Quincy made notes with quick efficiency, then looked at me with surprising kindness. Ms. Wren, I want to be clear. This disclosure doesn't negatively impact your vendor status. You've maintained full compliance with all contract terms. Your business practices are exemplary. Thank you. However, he continued, scrolling through data on his tablet, I do need to note some minor inventory discrepancies. Nothing serious, just recommendations for storage, optimization and rotation protocols to maximize product freshness. Standard suggestions we make to most vendors. I'll send detailed notes within 48 hours. He spent the next 20 minutes reviewing specifics, his voice a professional, drone that barely registered over the roaring in my ears. Chase remained standing by the window, staring at the street outside, like it held answers to questions he didn't know how to formulate. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, made him look older and somehow more human than the corporate titan I'd married. Finally, Quincy packed his tablet with efficient movements. That concludes the primary assessment. I'll process my report and submit recommendations by the end of business Wednesday. You should receive contract renewal terms within 30 days, pending administrative review of the disclosure. And the disclosure itself? I asked, needing to understand the full consequences. Flagged for ethics committee review per standard protocol, but I want to emphasize this has no bearing on your vendor performance evaluation. You've built something genuinely impressive here, Ms. Wren. Roland Industries is fortunate to work with suppliers of your caliber. He shook my hand, nodded respectfully to Chase, and left. The bell rang his departure, leaving us alone in the weighted silence of 6 years' worth of unspoken words. Chase turned from the window slowly, like a man moving through deep water. Blair, how long have you known? I interrupted, needing answers before I could handle whatever came next. About the shop, about the vendor contract. When did you find out? I saw your business name on this week's audit schedule. His voice carried exhaustion that hadn't been there in our marriage. Monday afternoon. I recognized Wren immediately. It's not exactly common. Ran a background check on the owner and found you, your business license, your vendor application from 3 years ago, everything. Except any indication of, he gestured vaguely toward where the twins had been. Them. You didn't know about the contract when it was approved? No. We process hundreds of vendor applications. The procurement team handles initial approvals. I only see audits now. Random selections from the active vendor database. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect corporate styling. If I'd known 3 years ago that you owned Wren and Hearth, I would have... What would you do? The question came out harder than intended. Rejected the contract. Used it as leverage to find me. What exactly would you have done, Chase? I don't know, he admitted, and the honesty in those 3 words cracked something in my chest. Probably made it worse somehow. That seems to be my particular talent where you're concerned. What would you do? Ask Quincy to call ahead or let the truth walk through the door? Comment your move below, and if you're still with me, hit like. It helps this story find someone who needs it. The silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd never said and everything that no longer needed saying. The shop's old radiator clanked. Somewhere outside, a car alarm went off and was quickly silenced. Normal sounds in an utterly transformed world. Their names, Chase said quietly. Astor and Cove. Those are constellation names. Stars and ocean currents. I'd spent hours choosing them during my pregnancy, lying awake at night with a book of astronomical terms. Astor is technically the Greek word for star. Cove is a sheltered bay. I wanted them to have names that meant protection and light. They're perfect. His voice cracked slightly. The names. The boys. All of it. They don't know about you. I needed him to understand this completely. They know they have a father somewhere, that not all families look the same, but I haven't told them who. Haven't shown them pictures or mentioned your name. I didn't want them carrying that weight. The weight of me, he said, not a question. The weight of being Chase Rowland's secret children. The media attention, the speculation, the loss of any normal childhood. I gripped the counter's edge. I grew up ordinary, Chase. My parents were ordinary people who loved me and gave me a simple, safe childhood before they died. I wanted that for Astor and Cove, the chance to just be kids without cameras or tabloids or strangers analyzing their every move. He absorbed this, his analytical mind probably cataloguing arguments and counterpoints. But when he spoke, his voice held only careful consideration. Can I meet them? Properly this time, not as the stranger who happened to be in their mother's shop. The question hung in air scented with cedar and orange peel. 6 years of separation, 6 years of single parenting, 6 years of protecting Astor and Cove from a father who hadn't known they existed. I don't know, I answered honestly. They're not a corporate acquisition, Chase. They're people, small, vulnerable people who deserve better than being caught in whatever complicated thing exists between us. I know. He picked up his briefcase, movements slow and deliberate. I'm not asking to rush anything. I'm asking if there's any possibility, however small, that I might have the chance to know them, however slowly that needs to happen. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Daniela's name flashed on the screen. I answered, already moving toward the door. Astor's crying, she said without preamble, concern clear in her voice. Says his stomach hurts and he misses you and nothing I do helps. I think he's picking up on the stress somehow. Maternal instinct overrode everything else. I'm coming. I grabbed my keys, already halfway to the door before remembering Chase. I have to go. Astor gets anxiety and stomach aches when he senses something's wrong. Lock the door if you leave. Can I come with you? The question stopped me mid-step. I won't interfere, but if he's upset because of my presence, I should, I don't know, help somehow. The offer surprised me. The old Chase would have returned to the office, delegated the emotional crisis to someone else. This Chase looked genuinely concerned about a child he'd met for 30 seconds. Fine, but you follow my lead. He doesn't know who you are yet, and we're not telling him today. We walked the 2 blocks to Daniela's apartment in silence. She met us at the door, Astor curled on her couch clutching his stuffed dinosaur, tear tracks on his face. Cove sat beside him looking worried, his usual cheerfulness dimmed. "Mummy," Astor said, reaching for me with the desperate need of a child who'd been brave too long. My tummy really hurts. I gathered him close, breathing in his familiar scent of apple shampoo and little boy sweat. His small body trembled slightly. "What kind of hurt, baby? Sharp or achy?" "Achy. Like butterflies, but angry butterflies. Anxiety, just as I'd suspected. Did something scare you?" He nodded against my shoulder. "The man at your shop?" He looked at us funny, and it made my tummy feel weird. Chase, standing in Daniela's doorway, Looked like I'd physically struck him. Funny how? I asked gently, rubbing circles on Asta's back the way that usually helped. Like he was trying to remember something important, but couldn't. It made everything feel wrong. Children sense the truth before adults admit it. I held him closer, making silent promises to protect him from complications he was too young to understand. Sometimes grown-ups have feelings they don't know how to show, I said carefully. That's not your job to fix or worry about. Your only job is being 5 and wonderful. Is he a bad man? Asta pulled back to look at my face, reading my expression with those 2 perceptive eyes. The question pierced something vital. I glanced at Chase, who'd gone very still. No, baby. He's not bad. He's just a person who's learning how to handle big feelings. Like you're learning. This seemed to satisfy him somewhat. The trembling eased. His breathing slowed to normal rhythm. Can we go home now? He asked, his voice small. Absolutely. Let's get Cove and head back. I stood, Asta still in my arms, though he was getting too big for extended carrying. Daniela. Thank you. Always, dear. She pressed a container of cookies into Cove's hands. For later, when everyone's feeling better. Chase hadn't moved from the doorway, watching the scene with an expression I couldn't quite read. When we filed past him, Cove paused. Are you coming too? He asked with characteristic directness. Chase looked at me, asking permission with his eyes. Mr. Rowland has work to do, I said, giving him an out he probably needed. Actually, he said slowly, I'd like to walk with you, if that's okay. Just to make sure Asta feels better. Asta lifted his head from my shoulder, studying Chase with wary curiosity. Why do you care if my tummy feels better? Because nobody should have a stomachache, especially not because of me, Chase said with careful honesty. I didn't mean to upset you. Oh. Asta considered this with his usual seriousness. Okay then, you can walk with us. So we walked back to my apartment in a strange formation, me carrying Asta, Cove holding the cookie container and chattering about Daniela's cat, Chase keeping slightly apart but present. Witnesses to an ending or a beginning, depending on how the next hours unfolded. At my building's entrance, Chase stopped. Thank you for letting me come. I hope Asta feels better soon. His name is Asta, Cove informed him seriously, and I'm Cove. You should use names when you know them. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Cove. Chase's mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. I'll remember. We rode the elevator in silence, the twins already recovering with the resilience of children who process emotions quickly. Inside my apartment, I settled Asta on the couch with his dinosaur and turned on his favorite nature documentary. Cove distributed cookies with an elaborate ceremony. My phone buzzed. A text from Chase. I meant what I said, however slowly, whatever timeline you need. I'd like the chance to know them, to know who they're becoming. I stared at those words for a long moment, then typed back. Thursday afternoons, 1 hour. The shop was slow then. Bring books or simple games, nothing expensive trying to buy affection. We'll see how it goes. 3 dots appeared then, thank you. I won't waste this chance. I pocketed my phone and joined my sons on the couch, letting the documentary narrator's soothing voice fill the space while I tried to process how completely my carefully controlled world had just transformed. 6 years of hiding ended by an audit form and 2 small boys who couldn't escape Daniela's apartment when told to stay put. The universe definitely had a sense of humor. I just wasn't sure if I was laughing or crying yet. Chase arrived at Wren and Hearth the following Thursday at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a canvas bag instead of his usual briefcase. Through the shop window, I watched him pause on the sidewalk, checking his phone, adjusting the bag's strap, delaying the inevitable. He looked nervous. Chase Rowland, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals without visible anxiety, looked genuinely nervous about spending an hour with 2 5-year-olds. The bell rang. He stepped inside. Hi, he said, the greeting awkward and uncertain. So different from the confident CEO who'd walked through this same door a week ago, expecting a routine audit. They're in the back, I said, gesturing toward my small office where the twins were supposedly organizing crayons. In reality, they were probably creating elaborate stories about the crayons' secret lives, but I'd learned to pick my battles. Remember what we discussed? No big revelations today. You're just Chase, someone Mommy knows from work. Understood. He shifted the bag. I brought books and a wooden puzzle that looked age-appropriate. The shop owner said 5-year-olds like problem-solving. You went to a toy store. 3, actually. I wanted to get it right. The admission was so earnest it cracked something in my chest. The first 2 felt too commercial. The third specialized in educational toys made by local craftspeople. It seemed more appropriate. Before I could respond, Cove burst from the back room. Mummy, Asta says blue crayons can't be kings, but I think they can be anything they want and… Oh, it's you. It's me, Chase agreed, kneeling to Cove's eye level with the instinctive movement I'd noticed before. Is this a bad time? I can come back if you're busy with important crayon politics. Cove giggled. Crayon politics. That's funny. He studied Chase with unsettling intensity. Did you bring something? Your bag looks full. I brought some books and a puzzle. If your mom says it's okay, maybe we could look at them together. I need to ask Asta. He's the careful one. Cove disappeared back into the office, his voice carrying clearly. Asta, the man from before is here, and he brought stuff and wants to show us. His name is Chase, came Asta's correction. Use names. They emerged together, Asta slightly behind his brother as usual, assessing the situation with those analytical eyes. Hi, Chase. Hi, Asta. Hi, Cove. Chase remained kneeling, putting himself at their level. Your mom said I could visit for a little while. Is that okay with both of you? The twins exchanged one of their wordless twin communications. Some silent negotiation happened in the span of 3 seconds. Finally, Asta nodded. Okay. But we have rules for visitors. I'd like to hear them. Rule 1, no yelling. Rule 2, if we say stop, you stop whatever you're doing. Rule 3, you have to be honest if you don't know something instead of pretending. Chase absorbed this with visible respect. Those are excellent rules. I agree with all of them. Good. Asta's posture relaxed slightly. What's in your bag? They settled on the floor in the shop's reading corner. The space D created with soft rugs and floor cushions for customers' children. Chase unpacked the bag carefully, showing them each item. 3 picture books about ocean life, space exploration, and how buildings stayed standing. The wooden puzzle depicted the solar system with pieces shaped like planets. This one's my favorite, Cove said immediately, grabbing the ocean book. I love octopuses. They're smart and can change colors and have 3 hearts. 3 hearts. Chase looked genuinely surprised. I didn't know that. See, you followed Rule 3, Asta observed approvingly. You said you didn't know, instead of pretending. I left them there and returned to the counter, pretending to work on inventory while actually watching the scene unfold. Chase read the ocean book with Cove, asking questions that showed he was actually engaged, not just going through motions. When did Chase Rowland learn to ask 5-year-olds about their favorite sea creatures with genuine curiosity? Asta approached the puzzle methodically, organizing pieces by size and color before attempting assembly. Chase noticed and adapted, offering observations instead of instructions. I see you're sorting by characteristics first, he said. That's smart problem solving. It's more efficient, Asta explained seriously. Random trying takes longer. You sound like someone I used to know, Chase said quietly, something wistful in his voice. She always said efficiency matters, but thoughtful efficiency, not just speed for its own sake. He meant me. I felt it in the way he glanced toward the counter, meeting my eyes for a brief moment before returning attention to Asta's puzzle strategy. 40 minutes passed. Then 50. The twins showed no signs of the wariness they'd displayed initially. Cove had migrated into Chase's lap during the second book, getting comfortable, with the unconscious ease children have when they feel safe. Asta sat close enough that their shoulders touched, explaining his puzzle. methodology with the patient air of a teacher with an interested student. "Do you have kids?" Cove asked suddenly, the question so innocent and devastating that I nearly dropped the pottery piece I was pretending to examine. Chase went very still. "No, I don't. I used to be married, but we divorced before we had children together." Technically true, truthful without revelation. I appreciated the care he took with his answer. "That's sad," Cove said matter-of-factly. "You're pretty good at kid stuff. You'd probably be a good dad." The expression that crossed Chase's face, longing mixed with regret mixed, with something close to hope, made my eyes burn with unexpected tears. "Thank you, Cove. That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me." "You're welcome. Can we do the space book now?" At 3 p.m., I called time. "Okay, gentlemen. Chase has other things he needs to do today." "Already?" Cove protested. "We didn't finish the puzzle." "Maybe next time," Chase said, beginning to pack the books carefully. "If your mom says I can come back." Both twins looked at me with pleading expressions. "We'll see," I said, the universal parental non-answer. "Say thank you for the books and puzzle." "Thank you," they chorused. Then Asta surprised everyone by stepping forward and hugging Chase briefly before retreating to his brother's side. Chase looked like he'd been handed something precious and fragile. "You're very welcome, both of you." After the twins returned to the back room, Chase lingered by the door. "Thank you for giving me this chance. How did it feel?" I needed to know if this was sustainable or just a novelty that would wear off when the reality of parenting's mundane difficulties set in. Terrifying and perfect. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its corporate styling. I kept thinking I'd say something wrong or boring, but they just accepted me. Asked good questions, shared things they cared about. When Cove climbed into my lap, He stopped, emotion thick in his voice. "Children are good at knowing who's safe," I said quietly. "They felt safe with you today. Don't take that trust lightly." "I won't, I promise." He adjusted his bag. "Same time next week?" "Same time." After he left, I found Asta organizing the puzzle pieces into the box with meticulous care. "He's nice," Asta said without looking up. "He listens when we talk." A lot of grown-ups pretend to listen, but they're really thinking about other stuff. "How do you know Chase was really listening?" "Because he remembered things." Cove said, "Octopuses have 3 hearts," and later Chase asked if the octopus in the book was a boy or girl octopus, and whether having 3 hearts meant they could love 3 times as much. Asta looked up at me. That's real listening. Out of the mouths of children came the most devastating observations. The coffee shop meeting happened 2 weeks later, after 4 successful Thursday visits had established routine. Chase texted Tuesday evening, "Can we talk? Just us. About logistics and everything else." We met Wednesday morning at the place on Pine Street that had somehow survived 3 ownership. Changes while keeping its worn leather booths and the smell of fresh cinnamon. Chase arrived first, 2 lattes waiting, one with extra foam, exactly how I'd always ordered it. "You remembered," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "I remember everything about you, Blair. That's never been the problem." He looked different in casual clothes, dark jeans, a sweater that softened his corporate edges. Tired, but present in a way that felt genuine. "Thank you for meeting me. You said we needed to talk about logistics and other things. But logistics first, because that's safer." He pulled out his phone, showing me a document. "I drafted a CO, parenting framework. Not a legal document, just a working agreement between us. You have full editing rights. Nothing is final until we both agree." I took his phone, reading through the carefully organized sections, schedule considerations that prioritized my business needs, questions about established routines he should maintain, privacy parameters regarding public disclosure, a section on extended family introduction that specifically noted, "if and when Blair is comfortable." One section made me pause. Press and public relations. The twins' existence is not public information. They will not become public information without Blair's explicit, enthusiastic consent. Any media inquiries will be declined. Any photographs will be blocked. Chase will handle all PR pressure internally. The children's privacy supersedes corporate image considerations. You'd protect them from the media, I said. Not quite a question. With everything I have, his voice carried absolute certainty. They deserve normal childhoods, private lives, the chance to be just Asta and Cove, not Chase Rowland's secret children in tabloid headlines. I scrolled further, finding the line that made my throat tight. I add support. I don't take agency. This is Blair's life, built through her work and sacrifice. I'm asking to be included in it, not to redesign it. This is good, I managed. Really good. I have some additions. School decisions should be joint once you're more established in their lives. Medical information sharing. But the foundation is solid. We spent 90 minutes refining details. He took notes in a leather journal, his handwriting smaller and neater than I remembered. Asked questions that showed he'd been paying attention during Thursday. Visits. How Cove's imaginative play helped him process anxiety. Why Asta needed warnings before transitions. The specific way they communicated in their twin language when overwhelmed. You're learning them, I observed. I'm trying. He set down his pen. Blair, I need to tell you something. About the letters you sent after you left. My stomach dropped. I know you ignored them. You don't need to explain. I never saw them. The words came out urgent, needing to be heard. I never got them. Any of them. I stared at him, trying to process. What? You said you sent 3 certified letters to the penthouse. I sold that place 2 months after you left. Couldn't stand being there without you. Any mail that arrived got forwarded to legal storage per standard estate transition protocol. He pulled up an email on his phone. My legal assistant found them on Monday. 3 certified letters from Blair Rowland, logged into storage 3 years ago. Never opened because they were categorized as personal correspondence for a closed residence. The coffee shop sounds faded to white noise. You didn't ignore me. I looked for you for 3 months. Hired investigators. Searched every database. Used every connection. You'd vanished completely. Name change, new address, no digital footprint. When I finally found your vendor, application last year during a random system review, you'd already established sole custody. My lawyers said fighting it would be expensive, public, and potentially traumatic for children who didn't know me. His voice carried old pain. So I backed off. Though I was choosing their well-being over my parental rights. You let them go because you thought it was better for them, I said slowly, understanding shifting everything. Not because you didn't care. I cared so much it physically hurt. But I'd already failed you. I didn't want to fail them by being selfish. We sat in silence while that revelation settled between us. 6 years of assumed abandonment, rewritten by misrouted mail and choices made from love rather than indifference. We've both been protecting them, I said finally. Just from different positions, with different information, and now we protect them together. He reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand. Which means we need to discuss the situation with my father and his publicist. The warmth drained from the moment. What situation? My father's former publicist, Truman Hayes, reached out last week. He's heard rumors, saw the audit report notation about related parties, noticed I've been taking Thursday afternoons off, put pieces together through his industry connections. Chase's jaw tightened. He's offering to manage the narrative before tabloids start asking questions. Protective fury surged through me. Manage how? Press release, controlled story, something about amicable co-parenting and privacy requests. He showed me a drafted statement on his phone. Corporate language that reduced our children to PR talking points. Standard crisis management. Except the twins aren't a crisis, and I'm not managing this like a problem to be solved. What did you tell him? That the children's privacy is non-negotiable. That there will be no statements, no confirmations, no managed narratives. If questions arise, the answer is no comment indefinitely. He pocketed his phone with controlled anger. Truman called me several creative synonyms for foolish and warned that silence creates speculation. I told him speculation was preferable to exploitation. Drop "I'm still here" if you caught the real turning point. Support without control. Your father won't be happy about that decision, I said quietly. My father stopped being happy with my decisions around the time I told him corporate responsibility wasn't just optics. Chase's voice carried weary acceptance. He called last week, heard through board connections that I'd been spotted at a park with children. Wait, you took them to the park? Last Saturday. You said I could take them for extended outings once the Thursday visits were established. He looked uncertain. Was that wrong? They wanted to feed ducks and I thought, no, it's fine. I just didn't realize you'd already done it. Something warm unfurled in my chest at the image of Chase Rowland feeding ducks with our sons. Cove fell in a puddle. Asta lectured him about watching where he walked. I bought them both hot chocolate and listened to elaborate theories about whether ducks have friends or just convenient acquaintances. A real smile crossed his face. It was the best Saturday I've had in 6 years. What did your father say when he called? The smile faded. That I'd gone soft. That spending weekends on domestic indulgence when there are mergers to finalize showed weak priorities. I told him my priorities had shifted, that those Saturdays matter more than any acquisition. He met my eyes. He said I'd become a disappointment. I said I'd finally become a person. We finished our coffee in contemplative silence. Outside the window, Seattle carried on with its usual rhythm, people rushing to work. Tourists consulting phones, a street musician setting up near Pike Place Market. I should get back to the shop, I said finally. Daniela's watching it, but Wednesday mornings are usually busy. Blair. Wait. He stopped me as I stood. The miscarriage. The one before the twins. I kept the medical records, the ultrasound from that pregnancy, not to hurt you, but because, he struggled with words, because they mattered, because that loss mattered, even though I didn't know how to show it then. Tears burned behind my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I failed you during the hardest moments, because I let work consume me when you needed a partner, because I want you to know I've carried that failure every day since. His voice broke slightly. And because I'm asking to not fail Asta and Cove the way I failed you, to learn from the worst version of myself and become someone better. I stood there, coffee cup in hand, looking at a man who'd finally learned to be honest about his failures. The old Chase would have defended his actions, rationalized the priorities that had destroyed us. This Chase simply acknowledged the damage and asked for the chance to repair what he could. Same time next Thursday, I said, my voice thick. And maybe next Saturday, if the weather's good. They'd love to go to the aquarium. The aquarium, he repeated, like I'd offered him something precious. I'll research the exhibits. Make sure we see the octopuses. Cove would never forgive me if we missed them. Walking back to the shop, I let myself feel the full weight of the morning. 6 years of assumed abandonment, revealed as miscommunication and protective choices made by two people who'd both been trying to do the right thing with incomplete information. We weren't fixed. We weren't even close to being healed. But we were building something, tentative and careful, constructed from honesty instead of assumptions. My phone buzzed. Chase, thank you. For the coffee, the conversation, the chance, for everything. Me, don't thank me yet. Wait until you've survived a full day with them. Saturday will test whether you're really ready for this. Chase, I've negotiated hostile takeovers and faced down board rebellions. How hard can 2 5-year-olds be? I laughed out loud, startling a passing pedestrian. He had absolutely no idea what he was in for, but he was willing to try, and for now, that was enough. The breathing scare happened on a Tuesday that started normal and deteriorated with frightening speed. Asta had been fighting a cold for 3 days, nothing alarming, just the usual preschool plague that circulated endlessly through classrooms. Runny nose, occasional cough, low-grade crankiness that came with feeling unwell. I'd kept him home Monday as a precaution, let him rest on the couch with nature documentaries and soup. Tuesday morning, he seemed better. I ate breakfast without complaint, played quietly with Cove while I prepared to open the shop, normal enough that I didn't think twice about it. The wheezing started around 11 a.m. I was helping a customer select pottery when I heard it, that distinctive sound of air moving through constricted airways. Asta sat on the floor behind the counter. The breathing that had been fine 20 minutes ago, now labored and increasingly difficult. Asta, baby, where's your inhaler? I kept my voice calm while panic screamed through my veins. He pointed to my bag with a hand that trembled slightly. I found the inhaler, administered it according to the protocol Dr. Martinez had taught me, waited the required 5 minutes. The wheezing continued. His lips were taking on a faint bluish tinge that sent maternal terror into overdrive. "Daniela," I called, already gathering Asta into my arms. She'd been organizing stock in the back room. "I need you to watch Cove and the shop. I'm taking Asta to urgent care." "Go," she said immediately, already moving to take Cove's hand. "We'll be fine here." I called Chase from the car, phone on speaker while I drove with one hand and kept the other on Asta's leg, needing the physical contact to reassure us both. He answered on the first ring. "Asta's having an asthma attack. The inhaler isn't working. I'm heading to Seattle Children's Urgent Care on the 40th. The words tumbled out in a rush. "I'm 20 minutes away. Do you need me to? Should I?" He sounded as panicked as I felt, his usual composed control completely absent. "Just come. Please." I needed him there, for reasons I didn't have time to analyze. "I'm already in the car." He arrived in 15 minutes, still wearing a suit from whatever meeting he'd abandoned mid-sentence. Found us in examination room 3, me holding Asta while a respiratory therapist administered a nebulizer treatment, the medication misting into the mask covering my son's small face. "Hey, buddy," Chase said softly, his voice carefully controlled despite the fear I could see in his eyes. "That mask looks pretty cool, like something a pilot would wear." Asta couldn't respond, focused entirely on breathing, but his eyes tracked Chase's movement across the room. Chase settled into the chair beside us, close enough to be present, but not crowding the limited space. "Your mom told me you've been fighting a cold like a champion. Sometimes our lungs just need extra help when they're tired from all that fighting." The therapist finished the treatment after 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Asta's breathing eased gradually, the awful wheezing quieting to something closer to normal rhythm. Color returned to his lips. His small body relaxed against my chest. "Good job," the therapist said warmly, removing the mask. "You did great, Asta. Dr. Okonkwo will be in shortly to check your lungs and talk to your mom about next steps." After she left, Asta looked up at Chase with exhausted eyes. "You came?" "Of course I came." Chase's voice carried something raw and honest. "When people we care about need help, we show up. That's what matters." The doctor ordered observation for an hour, then cleared us to go home with a prescription for stronger medication and strict instructions about monitoring his breathing. Chase stayed the entire time, never checking his phone, never showing impatience with the medical system's necessary slowness. "Want to hear about submarines?" he asked Asta, who nodded weakly. "There are people who live underwater in metal tubes for months at a time, studying ocean creatures and exploring places nobody's ever seen." He spun stories for 40 minutes, his voice low and soothing. Factual details about deep-sea exploration mixed with gentle speculation about what mysteries might exist in unexplored ocean trenches. Asta relaxed completely, occasionally asking questions that Chase answered with surprising knowledge. "How do you know so much about submarines?" I asked during a pause. I didn't. I researched ocean topics after Cove mentioned loving octopuses. He looked almost embarrassed. Bought 3 books on marine life and deep-sea exploration. Figured if I'm going to have conversations with a 5-year-old who loves the ocean, I should have actual information to share. He'd done homework. Chase Rowland, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, had bought children's books about ocean life so he could have informed conversations with our son. When the doctor cleared us to leave, Chase carried Asta to my car while I managed the discharge paperwork and prescription. Buckled him into his car seat with the careful attention of someone determined to get every detail right. "Thank you for coming," I said, standing in the hospital parking lot while autumn rain misted around us. "You didn't have to abandon work, but I'm glad you did." Thank you for calling. He adjusted Asta's blanket through the open car door, making sure he was covered properly. I know trust is earned slowly, but I want to earn it. However long that takes, whatever that requires. You showed up, I said simply. That's how it starts. In the car on the way home, Asta asked, drowsily from the back seat, "Is Chase our dad?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The question I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Would that be okay with you? Long pause. I think so. He knows good stories. And he wasn't scared when I couldn't breathe right. He just helped. He cared about helping you feel better. That's important. That's what dads do, right? They care and help and show up. Hit like if you believe second chances are built, not granted. Yeah, baby. That's exactly what good dads do. That evening, after both twins were asleep and the apartment finally quiet, my phone buzzed. Chase made it home, still thinking about Asta's breathing. Is he okay? Did the new medication help? Me, sleeping soundly, breathing normally. The new inhaler seems more effective. Chase, good. That's good. I couldn't focus on anything after I left. Just kept thinking about his face when he couldn't breathe properly. Me, welcome to parenting. The worry never stops. You just learn to function through it. Chase, how do you do this alone? The fear was overwhelming and I was only there for 2 hours. Me, you do it because they need you. And because loving them means carrying the fear so they don't have to. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Chase, I want to be there for the scary moments and the boring ones. Thursday afternoons are good, but I want more. I want to be someone they call when something goes wrong, not just the guy who brings puzzles weekly. Me, that takes time. Consistency. Showing up even when it's hard or inconvenient. Chase, I'm ready for hard and inconvenient. I've spent 6 years being hard and inconvenient. This version actually matters. I stared at my phone for a long moment before responding. Me, Saturday. Aquarium trip, like we discussed. Full day, not just an afternoon. We'll see how you handle extended parenting in public. Chase, thank you. I won't let you down. Me, don't thank me. Thank them by being present and patient and remembering that 5-year-olds have meltdowns in the most inconvenient places. Chase, noted. I'll research the aquarium layout and bring snacks. Cove mentioned goldfish crackers are acceptable currency. Despite everything, I smiled. He was learning. Saturday arrived with typical Seattle weather. Grey skies threatening rain but not quite delivering. Chase picked us up at 9 a.m., looking determinedly casual in jeans and a jacket. That probably cost more than my monthly rent, but at least wasn't a business suit. Ready for the octopuses? He asked as the twins climbed into his car, a vehicle I'd never seen before, equipped. With 2 brand-new car seats he'd clearly had professionally installed. You bought car seats, I said, something warm and complicated unfurling in my chest. Can't transport children safely without proper equipment. He adjusted Asta's straps with careful precision. The installation specialist spent an hour showing me correct positioning. Apparently there's a significant margin for error. You had them professionally installed. I'm not taking chances with their safety. He met my eyes over the car roof. Is that okay? I should have asked first, but I wanted to be prepared for outings. It's more than okay. The aquarium was packed with weekend crowds, but Chase navigated it with surprising competence. Held hands in congested areas. Remember to bring the promised goldfish crackers when energy flagged around 11. Listened to Cove's elaborate theories about whether octopuses preferred classical music or jazz. Helped Asta read information placards about deep-sea creatures with patient encouragement. Around 1 p.m., we stopped at the cafe for lunch. That's when the meltdown happened. Cove wanted chicken nuggets. The cafe only had fish and chips. The distinction mattered enormously to a tired 5-year-old who'd been overstimulated by 3 hours of aquatic excitement. But I want nuggets. His voice climbed to decibels that made nearby parents wince in sympathy. I know, buddy, but they don't have those here, I said with the weary patience of someone who'd navigated countless similar situations. We can get fish sticks, which are kind of similar, not similar. Nuggets. Tears started flowing, the full meltdown emerging. Chase knelt beside Cove's chair, voice calm. Hey, I hear you. You wanted chicken nuggets and they didn't have them, and that's really disappointing. Yes. Cove sobbed, grateful someone understood the magnitude of this tragedy. Sometimes we don't get what we want, and that feels terrible. It's okay to be upset about it. Chase pulled out his phone. But here's what we can do. We can eat what they have here, so our bodies have energy. Then later, on the way home, we can stop somewhere that has nuggets, not instead of lunch. Your mom's right that we need food now, but as acknowledgement that your feelings matter. Cove sniffled, processing this compromise. Nuggets, later. Nuggets, later. My promise. Okay. The crisis diffused as quickly as it had emerged. I'll eat fish sticks now. I stared at Chase, genuinely impressed. Where did you learn that? Parenting books. 3 of them. The section on emotional validation and compromise. He looked almost embarrassed. I've been reading every night after work. He'd been studying, actually researching how to be a better father, treating it with the same seriousness he'd once applied to corporate strategy. The afternoon continued smoothly. We saw the sea otters, watched the diving show, and spent 30 minutes in the touch pool where Astor overcame his initial hesitation to gently touch a sea star. Chase took photos on his phone, careful shots that showed the twins' hands and the exhibits but never their faces, protecting their privacy even in personal photos. On the drive home, true to his word, he stopped at a place that served chicken nuggets. Cove ate 3, declared victory, and fell asleep with the remaining nuggets clutched in his hand. Today was good, I said quietly, watching Seattle pass outside the window while both twins dozed in the back seat. Today was perfect, Chase corrected. Even the meltdown, especially the meltdown actually, that felt like real parenting, not just fun outings. Wait until you experience a full tantrum in the grocery store. Today was beginner level. I'll be ready. He glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping twins. Blair, I need to tell you something. My father wants to meet them. Every warm feeling from the day evaporated. Absolutely not. I told him no. Multiple times. Chase's hands tightened on the steering wheel. But he's persistent. Showed up at my apartment Wednesday night, demanding to know why I was hiding his grandchildren like they're shameful secrets. What did you say? That they're not secrets, they're people whose privacy I'm protecting. That he doesn't get access to them just because we share DNA. That his track record as a father doesn't qualify him for grandfather privileges. He exhaled slowly. He threatened to go public, force the issue through media attention. Rage burned through me, sharp and protective. He wouldn't. He would. He sees them as assets, future heirs to photograph for legacy purposes. I told him if he makes any public statement or contacts any media outlet about Astor and Cove, I'll resign from Roland Industries entirely and ensure he never has access to any of us. You'd leave the company? Without hesitation, his voice carried absolute certainty. I've spent 34 years being Richard Roland's son. I'm done letting that define me. If protecting our children means walking away from the empire, I'll walk away. Our children. He'd said our children, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He won't give up easily, I said quietly. Neither will I. He pulled up in front of my building. I've already spoken with a family attorney, not for custody issues, but for privacy protection. Drawing up documentation that establishes boundaries regarding media contact and public disclosure. Your name isn't on anything. This is entirely my fight with my father. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd learned to kneel at children's eye level, who'd researched parenting techniques and ocean facts, who'd threatened to abandon his inheritance to protect 2 kids he'd only known for 6 weeks. Thank you, I said, for choosing them. Always. He met my eyes. From now on, always. Later that night, after carrying 2 exhausted children upstairs and tucking them into bed still wearing their aquarium t-shirts because I couldn't bear to wake them for pajamas, I found a text from Chase. Today mattered more than any board meeting I've ever attended. Thank you for trusting me with it. Attached was a photo, not of the twins, but of the goldfish cracker package, empty except for crumbs. Below it, evidence of successful parenting currency deployment. I fell asleep smiling, my phone still clutched in my hand, dreaming of octopuses with 3 hearts and men who'd finally learned that showing up mattered more than any acquisition. We were building something, slowly, carefully, with good bolts and honest materials, and for the first time in 6 years, I let myself believe it might actually hold. The park became our neutral territory. Green Lake on Saturday mornings when the joggers had finished their first lap and families claimed picnic tables for the day. Chase started meeting us there 8 weeks after the urgent care incident, after Thursday afternoons had become sacred, routine, and the twins had stopped referring to him as the man from Mommy's shop and started calling him simply Chase. Aster brought his collection of origami books, a hobby he'd developed from watching YouTube. Tutorials with obsessive focus that mirrored his father's intensity for learning new things. Cove brought his imagination and complete disregard for instructions, which meant his creations rarely resembled their intended forms, but possessed enthusiastic character. Chase brought coffee for me and juice boxes for them, always remembering which flavors they preferred without needing reminders. "I want to make a dragon boat," Cove announced one Saturday in late November. Spreading out on the grass with construction paper, Chase had learned to bring in various colors. "Dragons don't boat," Aster corrected, already folding precise creases into blue paper. "They fly, my dragon boat, and fly. And also eat ice cream on Tuesdays." Chase settled cross-legged between them, his expensive jeans acquiring grass stains he no longer seemed to notice or care about. "What if we make boats that look like dragons?" Compromise between both ideas. This solution satisfied Cove completely. They spent an hour creating a fleet of increasingly abstract paper vessels, some recognizable as boats, others as dragons, most as enthusiastic chaos that defied categorization. When they finished, we walked to the lake's edge and launched them into the water. Aster's boats sailed true, their precise folds catching wind with mathematical efficiency. Cove's creations capsized immediately, but looked magnificent doing it, spinning in circles before sinking dramatically. Chase's first attempt nosedived within seconds. "You folded the stern wrong," Aster observed, with the critical eye of a master evaluating apprentice work. "Show me," Chase asked, genuinely interested in getting it right. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the dock, Aster's small hands guiding Chase's larger ones through the proper technique. Patient teacher and willing student. Cove had already lost interest, chasing ducks along the shoreline while I followed at a safe distance. When I returned, Chase and Aster had constructed 3 successful boats, all floating serenely in formation. "We made a fleet," Aster said proudly. "Chase learns fast when he pays attention." "Your teaching skills are excellent," Chase replied seriously. "Very clear instructions." Aster beamed, then ran off to show Cove their maritime success. Chase and I sat on the bench beneath the large sycamore tree, watching our sons argue about whether ducks understood boat races. The morning had turned unexpectedly warm, Seattle's version of Indian. Summer making one last appearance before winter settled in completely. "They called me Dad yesterday," Chase said quietly, his eyes on the twins. "Both of them." Cove first, then Aster about an hour later, like they'd discussed it beforehand and reached consensus. They probably did. They have twin conferences about everything important. I nearly cried in the middle of reading a bedtime story about construction vehicles. He smiled, something vulnerable and honest in his expression. I had to pretend I had allergies. "You're reading them bedtime stories now. Tuesdays and Thursdays. You said I could come over for dinner those nights, and bedtime stories just happened naturally afterward." He looked at me, uncertain. "Is that overstepping?" I should have asked. "It's not overstepping. It's good. They need consistency, and you're providing it." Silence settled between us, comfortable rather than awkward. Across the lake, the twins had recruited another child into their duck racing. Enterprise, all 3 of them completely absorbed in the competition. "Blair," Chase said, his voice carrying something I couldn't quite identify. "We've been doing this for 3 months now. Co-parenting, building routines, learning how to communicate without lawyers as intermediaries. We have. It's working well, I think." "It is. Better than I hoped." He turned toward me on the bench. "But I need you to know something. This isn't just about the twins for me. It hasn't been for a while." My heart rate accelerated. "Chase, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Not making demands or expecting reciprocation. I just need to be honest, because Rule 3 is honesty, and I'm following the rules Asta established." He took a breath. "I still love you. Never stopped. Probably never will. The man who let you walk away was broken in ways I didn't understand until I'd lost everything that mattered. I'm not that man anymore." "How do I know that?" The question came out raw. "How do I trust that you won't disappear into work again the moment things get difficult?" "You don't. You can't. Trust isn't given. It's built through consistent action over time." He met my eyes. "All I can do is show up. Keep showing up. Be present for the boring moments and the hard ones. Learn to communicate instead of withdrawing. Choose differently than I did before." A paper boat drifted past the dock, one of Asta's perfect creations sailing solo. "I want to kiss you," Chase said quietly. "I've wanted to for weeks, but I need you to know it's not about reclaiming something I lost. It's about building something new, something better. With careful attention and honest materials this time. We're not a fairy tale. We're a craft. We'd have to be careful," I said slowly, letting myself consider the possibility. Slow. With the twins as priority always, not afterthought. "Always," he agreed. "And if it doesn't work, if we try this and it falls apart, we don't let it damage what we've built for them." Agreed. Their stability comes first. I looked at him. Really looked at this man who'd learned to fold paper, boats and validate 5-year-old emotions about chicken nuggets, who'd threatened to abandon his inheritance to protect our children's privacy, who showed up consistently, not with grand gestures, but with quiet presence. "Okay," I said. "We can try." Carefully, he leaned in slowly, giving me space to retreat if needed. I didn't retreat. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like the passionate certainty of our younger selves. It felt like a hearth, warm, steady, built to last rather than burn bright and fast. When we pulled apart, Cove was staring at us from 10 feet away, mouth open in shock. "Mommy kissed Chase," he announced to the entire park. Asta appeared beside him, completely unbothered. People who like each other kiss sometimes. It's normal human behavior. But it's Mummy and Chase. Cove seemed personally affronted by our failure to consult him first. "Do you have a problem with that?" Chase asked, his tone serious enough that Cove considered the question carefully. "I guess not. But you should have told us first. We could have voted." "Your vote counts," I assured him. "How do you feel about it?" Another twin conference happened in silence. Finally, Asta spoke. "We vote yes. But no more surprise kissing without warning. We have delicate sensibilities." "Where did you learn that phrase?" I asked. "Daniela. She says it when we try to show her the dead bugs we find." Chase laughed, real and unguarded, the sound I'd fallen in love with years ago on a campus bench. "Fair terms. We'll provide advance notice of future kissing." "Good." Cove returned his attention to the ducks. Crisis resolved. Now we need to find the winning boat and give it a trophy. They ran off, leaving us alone again on the bench. "That went better than expected," Chase observed. "Wait until they tell Daniela. She'll have opinions." "I'm prepared for opinions. I've faced down hostile board members. How intimidating can one retired nurse be? You have no idea what you're in for." The confrontation with Richard Rowland happened the following Tuesday. Chase called me at 9 p.m., his voice tight with controlled anger. "My father went to the media. There's a story running tomorrow in the Seattle Times business section. Roland Air discovers secret children." Ice flooded my veins. He didn't. He did. "I just got a call from their editor requesting comment before publication." Chase's breathing was harsh. "I'm shutting it down. threatened legal action for invasion of the twins. Privacy reminded them that publishing information about minor children without parental consent opens significant liability. The editor agreed to kill the story. For now. But your father won't stop. No, he won't. Fabric rustled. He was pacing, probably wearing a path in his apartment carpet. So I'm forcing the issue. Called an emergency board meeting for Thursday. I'm resigning as CEO, effective immediately. Selling my shares back to the company at fair market value, severing all ties except the trust fund my mother left me, which he can't touch legally. Chase, you can't abandon everything you've built. I'm not abandoning anything that matters. I'm choosing what matters most. His voice gentled. Blair, I've spent 34 years being Richard Rowland's legacy project. I'm done. I'll consult independently, maybe start something smaller that aligns with actual values instead of just profit margins. But I won't let him weaponize the company against our children. Our children. He said it so naturally now. What can I do? I asked. Keep them safe. Keep being exactly who you are. Let me handle my father. He paused. And maybe, if you're willing, let me take you to dinner Friday night. Actual date. Just us. Daniela said she'd watch the twins overnight if needed. You asked Daniela. I asked if she'd be willing hypothetically. She said, and I quote, "About time you two stopped dancing around each other like nervous teenagers." Despite everything, I smiled. Friday works. But Chase, are you sure about leaving the company? I've never been more certain of anything. His voice carried absolute conviction. My father built an empire on ruthless efficiency and emotional detachment. I don't want to rule that empire. I want to build something different, something human, with you if you'll have me, with our sons, who deserve a father present for their actual lives, not just weekend visitations. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, processing the magnitude of what Chase was choosing. He was walking away from billions, from prestige, from everything his father had groomed him to inherit. For us, for the chance to build something real. My phone buzzed. A text from Chase. The board meeting is at 10 a.m. Thursday. Wish me luck dismantling my father's expectations. Me, you don't need luck. You need courage, and you've already shown you have that. I'm proud of you. 3 dots appeared, then, that means more than you know. See you Friday. I'll pick you up at 7. Me, it's a date. I fell asleep that night thinking about paper boats and grass stains, about men who'd learned to choose differently, about families built from careful choices instead of default assumptions. We weren't a fairy tale. We were better than that. We were real. The official audit report arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier in Rowland Holdings' signature navy envelope. I opened it at the counter, while Astor practiced writing his name in careful block letters and cove built. A tower from soapboxes, both boys comfortable in the shop that had become as much their space as mine. Vendor compliance audit, final report business entity, Wren and Hearth, Blair Wren, sole proprietor assessment. Period, FY 2023 to 2024. Lead auditor, Quincy Dart, senior compliance officer. I skipped to the conclusion section, holding my breath despite knowing rationally that my business practices were sound. Finding, compliant, commendable. Wren and Hearth demonstrates exemplary business practices across all assessed categories. Inventory management, sourcing documentation, financial transparency, and product quality exceeds standard vendor requirements. The proprietor has built a sustainable small business model worthy of recognition and continued partnership. Recommendation. Contract renewal with upgraded terms, expansion of product line authorization, consideration for feature in Rowland Holdings Sustainable Partnership Spotlight Program, pending proprietor approval. Note, related party disclosure was properly documented and handled per protocol. An independent ethics review confirmed no conflicts of interest in contract execution or renewal. Terms. All assessments were conducted with full transparency and professional integrity by compliance officers with no personal connection to disclosed parties. I read it twice, then a third time, letting the words sink in. Not just compliant, commendable. Not despite the complications with Chase, but assessed fairly through them by people who'd maintained professional standards. Mummy's smiling at papers again, Cove observed from his soapbox construction site. That's still weird. Sometimes papers have really good news, I said, tucking the report into my important documents folder. Good news I'd earned through years of careful work, proven through independent review. That afternoon, I framed the report's conclusion page and hung it behind the counter, not as vindication in some imagined competition, but as evidence that integrity mattered, that I'd built something real that stood on its own merit. The contract renewal came through 3 weeks later, better terms expanded. Product lines, a significant increase in quarterly order volumes. I spent 2 days fulfilling the first shipment under the new agreement, custom soap sets for their Pacific Northwest Properties winter collection. 250 units, each wrapped in the hand-stamped packaging that had become Wren and Hearth's signature. The twins helped by adding extra tissue paper and the occasional crayon drawing to random packages. I let them know some hotel guest would open their amenity kit and find Cove's enthusiastic. Purple Dragon or Asta's detailed spaceship, and maybe, just maybe, it would make them smile. In the shipment confirmation box, the one that would go directly to the procurement office, I tucked a note card. Thank you for believing in small businesses and supporting local artisans. Every product is made with care and intention. We're honored to partner with you. Blair Wren, Wren and Hearth. Simple, professional, honest. No hidden meanings or emotional subtext, just a small business owner acknowledging a good partnership. Chase called that evening after the twins were in bed, his voice warm with something I was learning to recognize as contentment. Got your note in today's shipment confirmation. Made with care and intention. I like that. It's true. We don't cut corners here. I know. That's why the partnership works. He paused. I'm not calling about business, though. Friday's board meeting went as expected. My father tried to block the resignation, but couldn't legally. I'm officially free as of Monday. How does it feel? Terrifying and liberating in equal measure. I heard ice clink in a glass. He was probably sitting on his apartment balcony, the one with the view of Elliott Bay. I've already had 3 consulting offers. 2 from companies genuinely interested in sustainable practices, 1 from a competitor. Of my father's who definitely just wants inside information, I won't provide. Which ones are you considering? The sustainable ones, maybe both, part-time for each. I want flexibility, time to be present for Thursday afternoons and Saturday mornings and Tuesday bedtimes. Time to build a life that isn't just work. That's good, Chase. Really good. Blair, he said, his voice shifting to something more serious. I need to tell you what happened with my father. The final conversation before I walked out of Roland Holdings. I settled into my couch, sensing this mattered. I'm listening. He said I was throwing away my legacy for temporary domestic satisfaction. Said the children would eventually resent me for giving up wealth and power to play house, that you'd leave again when things got difficult. Chase's voice held steady despite the obvious pain. I told him he'd confused legacy with empire. That Asta and Cove are my legacy, how I show up for them, what values I model, the father I choose to be. That wealth without humanity is just hoarding, and power without purpose is just ego. What did he say? That I'd become weak. I told him I'd finally become strong enough to choose what matters. He exhaled slowly. Then I walked out. Haven't spoken to him since. I'm sorry. I know that's not easy, even when it's necessary. It's the right choice. Maybe the first completely right choice I've made since I let you walk away 6 years ago. His voice softened. Speaking of right choices, are we still on for Friday? 7 p.m., you said. Where are we going? Surprise. Dress comfortably. Bring a jacket. Trust me. Friday arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. Chase picked me up at 7 exactly, looking nervous in dark jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. You bought a new sweater for our date, I observed, sliding into his car. I bought 3, returned 2, consulted Daniela on the final choice. He pulled away from the curb. Is that pathetic? It's endearing. He drove us to Alki Beach, parked near the lighthouse, From the trunk, he retrieved a basket I hadn't noticed before. "Picnic?" I asked. "Picnic. With food from that Italian place you used to love, assuming your taste hasn't changed completely." He looked uncertain. "Is this okay? I thought about fancy restaurants, but those feel performative. This feels more us." We spread a blanket on the beach as the sun set over the Olympics, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He'd remembered everything: the pesto pasta I'd always ordered, the specific brand of sparkling water I preferred, even the chocolate cannoli I'd considered my weakness. "You planned this carefully," I said, accepting the plate he offered. "I wanted to get it right. I want to show you I can do better than expensive gestures without thought." He settled beside me on the blanket. The first time around, I threw money at everything: fancy restaurants, luxury vacations, jewelry. I thought that's what love looked like. I didn't understand that you just wanted presents. I wanted a partnership, someone who showed up emotionally, not just financially. "I'm learning. Slowly, but learning." He looked at me with those grey eyes that our sons had inherited. "Blair, I don't know what we're building here. I don't know if we're heading toward reconciliation or just creating the world's most complicated co-parenting arrangement. But I know I want to build it carefully, honestly. With you." The waves rolled in gentle rhythm. Somewhere behind us, a family laughed at their dog's antics. Normal sounds in a moment that felt anything but normal. "I want that too," I admitted. "I'm scared, terrified, actually, of repeating the same patterns. But I'm also hopeful that we're different people now, that we've learned enough to do better." "We have. We are." He reached for my hand, the touch tentative. "Can I tell you what I've learned? What the past 3 months with you and the twins has taught me?" "Please." "That transparency matters more than perfection. That I can be honest about not knowing something instead of pretending expertise. Those boundaries are doors we choose to open, not walls that lock us out. That money speaks loud, but the character whispers longer, and the whispers are what children remember." He squeezed my hand gently. "That forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a behavior. A choice you make daily to let someone try again. If this story spoke to you, here's what I've learned matters. Transparency with care. Honesty doesn't mean brutal. It means clear communication wrapped in consideration for the people receiving it. Boundaries as doors, not walls." I set limits to protect the twins, but I left room for Chase to prove he'd changed. Boundaries should have gates you can open when someone shows up consistently worthy of trust. Money speaks loud, but the character whispers longer. Chase's wealth couldn't buy access to his children. His consistent, humble presence earned it instead. Forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a behavior. I didn't wake up one day feeling forgiving. I made small choices to let Chase try again, then watched his actions prove whether he deserved continued chances. Second chances are responsibility, not entitlement. Chase didn't demand a role in the twins' lives. He asked for the opportunity to earn one, then did the work. The twins are 6 now, turning 7 in 3 months. They split time between my apartment and Chase's new place, smaller than the penthouse, walking distance from the shop with a reading fort that's become legendary in their social circle. Chase consults for 2 sustainability firms and volunteers Thursdays at their school, helping with the science program. We're not living together yet, maybe won't for a while, but we're building something deliberate and honest. We still disagree about sugar limits and screen time and whether Cove's imaginary friend needs a seat at restaurants. We still have hard conversations about past hurts and current fears. But we show up for those conversations. We listen. We build this craft of co-parenting, and maybe, eventually, partnership, with the same care I put into every product that leaves my shop, made with intention, wrapped in hope. Delivered with the understanding that quality matters more than speed. The bell over my shop door sang once, and the man who'd signed my heart saw his smile on 2 small faces. That moment could have been a catastrophe. Instead, it became the first brick in a bridge we're still building, not back to what we were, but forward to what we're becoming. If this story spoke to you, like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, the courage to set boundaries, to offer second chances, to build something real from broken pieces. Subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories, because your support makes these stories possible. Comment one lesson you're taking with you, or tell me the moment you'd rewatch. I read every comment, and your words matter more than you know. Thank you again for helping us pass 600 subscribers. You're not just watching stories, you're building this community with me. Onward, always onward, with paper boats and grass stains and the quiet courage of starting over. This is Blair Wren's story. But maybe, in some small way, it's yours too.